Imagine waking up tomorrow morning, the sun's streaming through your blinds.
Right. It's a totally normal morning.
Exactly. The coffee maker is just starting to hiss in the kitchen, and you feel an itch.
Oh, that's where it starts.
Right there on your forearm. But as you go to scratch it, you realize it's not a mosquito bite.
It's not dry skin either.
No, this itch is bone deep. It feels like it's vibrating beneath the muscle, almost like it's humming through your veins.
Which is such a visceral image.
It is. And worse than the physical sensation is this sudden, intrusive thought that arrives right with it.
The compulsion.
Yes, this overwhelming, unshakable compulsion to just walk out your front door.
To just leave everything.
Leave your home, your job, your family, whatever life you've built, and just start walking west.
And you don't even know why.
You have absolutely no destination in mind other than the setting sun, but, with absolute terrifying certainty that you have to go.
It's just an incredible hook for a story.
So think about that for a second. How far down the road would you make it before you realized you weren't actually in control of your own mind anymore?
That is, it's a profoundly unsettling thought experiment. It really strikes at the very core of human experience.
It really does.
Because we all have this assumption that we have ultimate sovereignty over our own bodies.
Right.
And our own choices. So when you strip that away, what is actually left?
And that terrifying question is the entire foundation of our deep dive today.
I am so excited for this one.
Me too. We are taking a comprehensive journey into the pages of Alice Martin's incredibly striking debut novel, Westward Women.
Such a fantastic book.
Our mission today is to unpack the horrifying, fascinating, and quite frankly, deeply metaphorical world that Martin has constructed.
Because it's an alternate history.
Right, an alternate history where a mysterious fungal infection drives hundreds of thousands of American women to abandon everything they know and just migrate toward the Pacific Ocean.
And to really appreciate what this book accomplishes, I think it helps to understand a bit about the mind behind it.
Oh, absolutely. Alice Martin isn't just a casual thriller writer.
No, not at all. She is a literature professor. She holds a PhD from Rutgers. And honestly, that academic rigor is evident on every single page of this novel.
It was published by St. Martin's Press, right?
Yeah, St. Martin's. And she weaves together historical context, biology, and literary symbolism in a way that feels just completely grounded.
You never feel like you're reading some cheap sci-fi gimmick.
Exactly. It reads like a forgotten chapter of American history.
Well, let's set the stage for that history, because the backdrop is absolutely crucial to why this story feels so suffocating.
It really is.
We are not in the modern, hyper-connected era of smartphones and GPS tracking. We are dropped right into the middle of 1973.
The setting is everything here. Think about what America looked like in 1973.
It was a powder keg.
A total powder keg of societal anxiety.
Yeah.
The draft for the Vietnam War is coming to an end.
So you have a whole generation of traumatized young men returning home.
Returning to a country that feels entirely different than the one they left. Plus, the Watergate scandal is just beginning to crack open.
Which is eroding all that public trust in institutions and the government.
Right, and dominating the headlines, you have these massive society-shifting debates surrounding Roe v. Wade and the feminist movement.
The country is already feeling fractured, tense, and just utterly exhausted by constant social upheaval.
People are arguing at dinner tables, they're protesting in the streets. The very foundation of the traditional American family is being questioned loudly and publicly.
And right in the middle of all that pre-existing tension, Martin introduces this brand new, terrifying variable.
The fungus.
The fungal infection. But it doesn't just infect anyone. It specifically, exclusively targets women between the ages of 16 and 35.
Which is so pointed.
It is. It's the exact demographic most closely associated with the shifting tides of the era's social movements.
With new motherhood, with entering the workforce in larger numbers.
Exactly. It just grabs them biologically and compels them into this mass exodus.
It completely destabilizes a society that is already teetering on the edge. But to understand the macro-level panic, we really need to look at the micro-level horror of the disease itself.
Oh, the pathology of this infection is brilliant because it's so deeply visceral. Let's unpack this a bit.
Please do, because Martin doesn't shy away from the grotesque reality of what this would actually look like.
Not at all. As I mentioned, it starts with that tingling itch in the fingers of the arm, but it doesn't stay there.
It progresses into this profound, heavy lethargy.
Yes, and severe cognitive decline and memory loss. And we're not just talking about forgetting where they put their keys.
No, it's an erasure of identity. They forget their own names. They forget the names of the mothers who raised them.
And physically, the transformation is just as alarming. Their pupils dilate to the point where their eyes look almost entirely pitch black.
Giving them this vacant, glassy-eyed stare.
And the social conditioning we all have, the desire to be polite, to be clean, to conform to societal expectations, just evaporates. They lose all inhibition.
Feral is the word that kept coming to my mind while reading these passages.
Feral is exactly it. You have these women, some of whom were valedictorians, stay-at-home mothers, secretaries.
Just suddenly wandering the shoulders of major highways.
Right. And they're scratching their legs raw to combat the internal itch, leaving these angry, red, overlapping scars that almost look like violent stretch marks.
Martin includes these incredibly stark details. They are living in the rusted beds of pickup trucks. They are scavenging half-eaten food out of diner dumpsters.
There are entire paragraphs detailing how their bodies reject normal hygiene. They craft these rudimentary homemade tampons out of whatever scraps they can find, but they just fall out as they walk.
And there is this ever-present, teeny smell of blood and sweat that just seems to follow the herds of them.
It is profoundly undignified, which is what makes it so terrifying to read.
That loss of dignity is a crucial element. They are reduced to a singular biological imperative.
Because through all of the physical degradation and the memory loss, there is this relentless mantra echoing in their infected minds.
It's described almost like a chanted hallucination that overrides every other thought.
Westward. Always westward.
It pushes them forward until their feet literally bleed.
So if you're living in 1973 and suddenly your daughters, your wives, your sisters are turning into these glassy-eyed wanderers heading for the coast.
How does the world react?
Exactly. What's the societal reaction?
It's swift, terrified, and deeply authoritarian. The panic isn't just about a disease. It's about a total loss of control.
Hospitals immediately pivot from treating the illness to simply containing the infected.
We see this vividly through the perspective of a character named Betty.
Right, Betty. She's a nurse at a local hospital in Pennsylvania.
And she is also the mother of one of our main characters. There's a scene where Betty talks with chilling casualness about involuntarily administering heavy, debilitating sedatives to teenage girls.
She does this because the parents are terrified, right?
Yes, they are willfully signing the paperwork to essentially put their own daughters into chemically induced comas.
Just to keep them from unlocking the front door and wandering off into the night.
It's essentially mass incarceration under the guise of medical care.
And it extends far beyond the hospital walls. Airlines immediately implement mandatory health screenings at the gates,
banning any woman who shows even a hint of the infection from boarding a flight.
Entire counties institute these draconian curfews.
You start seeing local police treating these wandering women not as patients who need help, but as public safety hazards that need to be neutralized or corralled.
Which forces a massive philosophical conversation about autonomy.
Oh, absolutely. And Martin explores this brilliantly through a televised debate featured early in the book.
That scene perfectly captures the zeitgeist of the novel.
You have two men on a national news broadcast debating the crisis. On one side, there's a medical ethics expert.
And he is arguing vehemently that strapping women to hospital beds against their will, pumping them full of sedatives, is a gross violation of human rights.
Right. He advocates for bodily autonomy, arguing that even if their minds are compromised by the infection, locking them up is fundamentally unethical.
But then you have the policy guy on the other side of the desk.
And his argument is terrifyingly pragmatic. He pushes back hard, pointing out that these women do not exist in a vacuum.
They aren't just isolated individuals. They are the mothers of young children. They are daughters. They make up a massive chunk of the workforce.
He argues that they have a fundamental duty to the society that supports them. Because their mass exodus threatens to collapse the economy and the traditional family structure, he argues they absolutely must be controlled.
He actually advocates for them to be arrested on site for the sake of public safety and national stability.
What's fascinating here is that Martin isn't using this scene to preach to the reader. She maintains this strict neutrality, holding up a mirror to the anxieties of the era.
She presents both the ethical, individualistic argument and the pragmatic, policy-driven argument with equal weight.
It forces the reader to grapple with the tension themselves. When a public health crisis threatens the very fabric of society, where is the line between personal freedom and public duty?
And more pointedly, who historically gets to draw that line when it comes to women's bodies?
Exactly.
That brings up a really important question about the nature of the disease itself. In the realm of science fiction and alternate history, we've seen zombie viruses, bacterial plagues, alien parasites.
But Martin specifically chose a fungus.
Right. What is it about a fungal infection that makes this specific story work so well?
The choice of a fungus is arguably the most brilliant metaphorical masterstroke of the novel. Think about how fungi operate in nature.
They aren't like viruses that aggressively attack and destroy cells in a rapid, flashy way.
Fungi are insidious. They spread via invisible spores in the air. You breathe them in without ever knowing it.
They quietly and slowly take over a host, integrating themselves into the host's system.
And in the text, the fictional doctors theorize that this particular fungus specifically feeds on estrogen and other hormones.
So it's literally consuming their biological womanhood as fuel.
Precisely. And on a macro level, fungal mycelium forms these massive interconnected networks underground. They communicate.
The metaphor here is incredibly rich when you apply it to sociology.
A fungal network mirrors how ideas spread. Specifically, it mirrors how a collective, unspoken urge to escape the claustrophobia of domestic life and strict societal expectations can spread invisibly but powerfully among a marginalized group.
It's a literal biological manifestation of a radical idea taking root. The infection is the physical embodiment of the thought, I cannot stay here anymore.
That transition from the macro societal view to the intimate individual experience is really where the book sinks its hooks into you.
Because it's one thing to watch politicians debate curfews on television, but the real horror is how this fungal compulsion rips through the lives of regular people.
Let's look at the three distinct paths through this epidemic by examining our three central characters.
This is where Martin's character work truly shines. She gives us three very different archetypes of women reacting to the constraints of their world. Let's start with Aimee.
Yes, Aimee.
I think of Aimee as the ultimate accommodating stay-behind.
The one who tries to hold everything together.
Exactly. Think about the Aimee in your own life. Or maybe you are the Aimee. You're the one who cleans up the dishes in the break room without being asked. You're the peacemaker.
You swallow your own discomfort to ensure everyone else around you is comfortable.
That is Aimee to her absolute core.
She has spent her entire life making herself small so as not to be an inconvenience. And the imagery Martin uses to introduce Aimee is unforgettable. It really establishes her character's tragedy.
It's stunning. We meet Aimee at her college graduation in 1973 at the University of Maryland.
Such a great scene.
She is sitting on this cheap faux wood folding chair that is slowly sinking into the muddy turf of the football field.
And as she looks around at her graduating class, she notices a terrifying number of empty chairs scattered throughout the rows.
These are the chairs meant for her female classmates who have already caught the infection and vanished.
It's this visual representation of a disappearing generation.
And up on the podium, the university president is giving this tone-deaf speech about how the world is uncertain, so you must hold your family close.
Which is deeply ironic for Aimee because her own family didn't even bother to show up to her graduation.
Exactly. Her family dynamic explains so much about why she is the way she is. We mentioned her mother earlier, Betty, the hospital nurse.
Betty is this highly anxious, constantly chattering woman who deals with her own stress by volunteering Aimee to do chores and run errands for other people.
Aimee's boundaries simply do not exist to her mother.
And then there's her father, Gerald.
Gerald is a fascinating foil to the chaos of the novel.
He really is. He's an entomologist, a scientist who studies insects. He is emotionally distant, entirely absorbed in his basement laboratory, meticulously pinning dead bugs to display boards.
He categorizes and traps things behind glass for a living.
Between the demanding, anxious mother and the detached, cataloging father, Aimee represents the women who are trying desperately to maintain the status quo.
She's trying to be the good girl, playing by the rules of a society that is literally emptying out around her.
But Aimee's fragile ecosystem relies entirely on her childhood best friend, Ginny.
If Aimee is the anchor trying to hold everything down, Ginny is the hurricane. She is the restless, wild child.
Ginny is the polar opposite of Aimee. She is magnetic, impulsive, and constantly chafing against the limitations of their small Pennsylvania hometown.
She is the girl who, even before the infection, was always searching for a thrill, an adventure, something to make her feel alive.
The book mentions she used to shoplift lipstick from the local pharmacy. Not because she couldn't afford it, but purely for the adrenaline rush of breaking the rules and getting away with it.
And naturally, Ginny is the catalyst for the entire narrative, because inevitably, the girl who always wanted to run away is the one who catches the infection.
Ginny disappears in the middle of the night.
And the way Aimee finds out is just heart-wrenching. She receives a frantic phone call from Ginny's mother, Pam, crying that Ginny's bed is empty and the front door was left wide open.
That phone call is Amy's breaking point. For her entire life, Ginny was the only person who made Aimee feel seen, who brought color into her accommodating gray world.
To save the one person she truly loves, Aimee finally has to break the rules.
It's a massive turning point.
Yeah.
Aimee goes into her mother's bedroom, finds the emergency petty cash hidden in an old Werther's original candy tin, steals it, packs a single bag, and drives west to track Ginny down.
The good girl finally rebels, not because of a fungal compulsion, but out of desperate loyalty.
And as Aimee is driving her car onto the chaotic, unpredictable westward highways, Martin introduces our third critical perspective.
Eve, or Kate, depending on who she's talking to.
Right, Eve. Her motivations for being on the road are entirely different from Amy's or Ginny's. If Amy's the accommodator and Ginny is the wild child, Eve is the ambitious exploiter.
Eve is such a complicated character because she is deeply unsympathetic, yet you completely understand her desperation.
She is a disgraced former journalist. She used to write for Rolling Stone magazine. She had a taste of that glamorous, high-profile life.
But her career imploded after she published a massive, sensational cover story about a Kentucky all-women's cult.
It turned out the entire story was fabricated by a source who lied to her. She didn't vet the source properly, the magazine had to retract the piece, and she was blacklisted.
So when we meet Eve, she has been reduced to working as a secretary. Her editors won't return her calls. The journalism world has entirely shut her out.
And crucially, Eve isn't infected with the fungus. She has full control of her faculties. But she is out on the road voluntarily tracking the migration of these Westward women.
Why? Because she sees this massive tragedy not as a humanitarian crisis, but as her ticket back to the top.
She needs a sensational headline. She spends her nights sitting in dingy dive bars along the highway, tracking down these sick, vulnerable, glassy-eyed girls.
She buys them cheap beers to loosen their tongues, scribbling their delusional ramblings into her notepad.
She doesn't view them as victims suffering from a horrific disease. She views them as raw material to be mined for content.
Her ruthless ambition is really a reaction to her own domestic reality.
Eve lives with her boyfriend, William, who is perfectly kind but suffocatingly traditional. He embodies everything the 1970s expected a woman to settle for.
He is the man who comes home and asks, "When will dinner be ready?"
He introduces Eve at dinner parties as his girlfriend, who works as a secretary, completely erasing her identity as a writer.
She hates it. She deeply resents the domesticity.
She despises it. Eve represents the desire to escape societal expectations, not through a biological infection, but through sheer individualistic ambition.
She wants to be special. She wants to be recognized for her intellect.
And she is so desperate to escape the fate of a traditional housewife that she is willing to exploit a national tragedy to do it.
This clash of motivations, Amy's desperate loyalty, Ginny's infected compulsion, and Eve's ruthless ambition, all converges on the open road.
And that brings us to the dark heart of the novel. The highway in 1973 was already a dangerous place, but Martin turns it into an absolute nightmare.
We have to understand the specific vulnerability of the women out on these roads. The novel makes a very sharp socioeconomic observation here.
The women who end up wandering the highways, the ones who aren't immediately caught and sedated in private hospitals by well-off families, are disproportionately working class or marginalized women.
They are women without health insurance, without financial safety nets.
They are out there hitchhiking, entirely exposed to the elements, their minds foggy and their physical strength depleted by the infection.
And it creates the perfect hunting ground. Here's where it gets really interesting. If you have hundreds of thousands of vulnerable, disoriented women migrating aimlessly, someone is going to take advantage of that.
Enter the antagonist of the novel, a man known to the wandering women only as the Piper.
The Piper is one of the most chilling literary antagonists in recent memory.
Because he is so grounded in the reality of the 1970s serial killer archetype, but with a specific opportunistic twist.
He operates under the absolute illusion of the savior. Picture this. A repurposed, rusted, white school bus pulling up alongside a desolate stretch of highway.
The air around it constantly smells of cheap gasoline and exhaust.
The piper opens the doors and he targets the straggling, exhausted women who are barely staying on their feet.
He uses this disarming faux hippie slang. He calls the bus a commune on wheels, you dig.
He smiles warmly and promises them that he understands their urge. He promises to help them reach the Pacific Ocean safely, offering them a sanctuary from the harsh realities of the open road and the police blockades.
He weaponizes their own desires against them. But beneath that veneer, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the piper represents the ultimate opportunistic predator.
He is a man who looks at a catastrophic societal crisis, and instead of feeling empathy, he asks, how can I extract value from this?
And the reality of what happens on that bus is psychological torture. He takes whatever meager money or jewelry the women have left in their pockets as a toll for the journey.
But more sinisterly, he doesn't actually drive them straight west.
No, the women are too sick to read road signs or track the sun accurately, so he drives them in massive looping circles across the Midwest and the Pacific Northwest.
He intentionally disorients them. He wears them down physically by providing barely any food, and mentally by keeping them entirely dependent on his fabricated reality.
He eventually isolates them in a remote, abandoned apple orchard hidden deep in the woods. He forces them to do manual labor, harvesting whatever's left on the property.
And ultimately, when these women become too unresponsive from the late stages of the disease, or if they have moments of lucidity and become too troublesome,
He murders them. He disposes of them when they cease to be useful playthings.
it is horrific. And the tension builds to an absolute boiling point because Aimee, relying on sheer desperation, manages to track this bus down.
She intentionally gets herself picked up, infiltrating this rolling nightmare, because she genuinely believes Ginny is on board.
She endures the disorientation, the smell of gas, the creepy pseudo-spiritual lectures from the piper. But when they finally reach the remote orchard and she can secretly investigate the other cabins, she realizes Ginny isn't there.
Instead, Martin delivers a phenomenal twist. Aimee finds a young, deeply infected girl named Teenie.
And Teenie is actually Christine Eve's estranged younger sister.
We learn that while Eve was out chasing headlines, her own sister caught the infection and ran away from home, falling right into the clutches of the piper.
The climax that unfolds in the orchard shack is pulse-pounding. Aimee has spent her entire life cleaning up other people's messes, avoiding conflict at all costs.
But now, she is trapped in a remote cabin with a serial killer, and she has this sick teenager, Teenie, depending on her for survival.
The piper realizes that Aimee isn't exhibiting the late-stage symptoms. He realizes she is lucid and therefore a threat. He comes to her cabin in the middle of the night.
It is a phenomenal character transformation. Aimee doesn't cower. She taps into this primal, feral strength that she didn't even know she possessed.
When he breaches the door, she doesn't try to reason with him. She bluffs him at first, playing into his superstitions, pretending she has some psychic connection to the women he's killed, that she knows his secrets.
And when he hesitates, she strikes. She takes a heavy iron fireplace poker, and she beats him to death.
She kills him to save herself and to save Teenie.
The girl who used to apologize for breathing too loudly just bludgeoned a predator to death to protect her pack.
But it raises a huge question. How in the world did Aimee, a quiet girl from Pennsylvania, manage to track down a random moving school bus in the middle of America?
That takes us into some of the most surreal and fascinating territory of the book.
Yes, Aimee's journey on the road gets incredibly strange, bordering on the supernatural. But it's deeply tied to the biological metaphor we discussed earlier.
As Aimee drives west, she starts having these bizarre, highly vivid experiences. When she sleeps in her car, she doesn't just dream.
She has lucid visions where she is literally occupying the bodies of other infected women across the country.
In one instance, she sees through the eyes of a sick girl sitting in a diner in Detroit, staring at a neon sign.
In another terrifying sequence, she experiences the final suffocating moments of the girls who were murdered by the piper near Seattle. She hears their voices in her head, this collective whispering and chanting that guides her down specific highways. How is this actually happening?
Martin provides a brilliant speculative explanation for this through the characters themselves. Some of the more lucid infected women Aimee encounters on the road theorize about the nature of the fungus.
Right, because in the real world, in nature, mycelial networks, often referred to as the Wood Wide Web, communicate through chemical signaling over vast distances.
A fungus on one side of a forest can send nutrients or warning signals to a tree miles away through this interconnected underground web.
So applied to the women,
In Martin's world, This biological concept becomes a literal manifestation of collective consciousness and sisterhood. The infected women are unconsciously broadcasting their locations, their fears, and their pain through this chemical fungal network.
But why Aimee? Aimee isn't infected.
But Aimee is deeply, radically empathetic. She spent her entire childhood attuning herself to Ginny's every mood, anticipating the needs of her overbearing mother.
Her mind is naturally porous.
Exactly. Her empathy acts as a receiver, allowing her to tap into this psychic network. It's the collective whisper of the lost, abused women that acts as a compass, guiding her directly to the piper to stop him.
Empathy as a literal survival tool. It's a beautiful concept. And eventually, following those psychic echoes, Aimee, with Teenie in tow, makes it to Seattle.
And the long-awaited reunion finally happens.
Aimee finds Ginny. They're in this abandoned ramshackle house overlooking the water. But when Aimee walks through the door, bracing herself to find her best friend as a glassy-eyed zombie ready to walk into the ocean.
Ginny is just sitting there. She's lucid. She's fine. She cured herself.
This is perhaps the most profound thematic revelation in the entire novel. The mystery of the whole book has been, what is the cure? Is there a vaccine?
Do they have to physically reach the salt water of the Pacific Ocean? Does the hunger just eventually burn itself out?
And the answer is none of the above. Ginny reveals that the cure wasn't a physical destination.
Ginny tells Aimee about her journey. She explains that she actually crossed paths with Eve, the journalist, on the road.
And for a brief window of time, Ginny and Eve traveled together. They formed a deep, emotional bond. They relied on each other in a world that was trying to destroy them.
And Ginny tells Aimee this heartbreaking line. She was my cure, but I wasn't hers.
It forces the reader to rethink the entire nature of the infection.
The fungus feeds on the desire to escape. It thrives on the feeling of being trapped, isolated, and misunderstood.
Ginny realized while traveling with Eve that continuing to run west wasn't the romantic, cinematic adventure she had envisioned.
The open road didn't fix her. Running away didn't fill the internal void she felt back in Pennsylvania.
Right. The infection is essentially a physical manifestation of psychological starvation. Once Ginny stopped running from herself, once she accepted her own flaws and found a genuine, grounding human connection with Eve, the infection just burned out.
It lost its fuel. She didn't need to escape anymore because she finally felt seen.
The thematic implication is staggering. It suggests that if society had just allowed these women to forge genuine connections, to have autonomy and purpose outside of domestic servitude, the fungus would have never been able to take root in the first place.
But as Ginny noted, that connection wasn't enough to cure Eve.
Which brings us to the tragic events at the ocean's edge, because Eve's trajectory ends very differently.
Eve couldn't handle the domestic intimacy that Ginny was offering. The idea of settling down, even with someone she cared about in a strange new world, felt too much like the suffocating life with William she had run away from.
So Eve abandons Ginny in Seattle and continues to the Pacific coast alone.
Eve's arc is a tragedy of ambition. She thought she wanted a headline. She thought she wanted to be a famous journalist, to prove all the male editors wrong, to show William she was more than a secretary.
But standing at the edge of the continent, looking out at the vast expanse of water, she has a devastating realization.
She didn't want a story. She just wanted to escape her own skin. She wanted to escape the crushing weight of her family's expectations, the feeling of never being enough, yet always being demanded of.
The imagery Martin uses for this scene is haunting. It's overcast, the wind is howling. Eve walks straight into the crushing, salty, freezing waves of the Pacific Ocean.
She lets the undertow take her. She goes under, fully surrendering to the void.
But she doesn't die. She is pulled out of the surf, coughing up seawater, shivering on the sand, and she is saved by the very person she had abandoned years ago to chase her career in the city.
Her little sister, Teenie.
It is an incredibly powerful moment. Teenie, who had been saved by Aimee, made it to the coast just in time.
It is a portrait of women saving women, even when they are fundamentally broken, even when they have failed each other in the past. It's grace in the face of total devastation.
It's a breathtaking sequence that leads us beautifully into the novel's epilogue. The story fast-forwards in time, the infection eventually plateaus, it just goes dormant, receding into the background of American life.
But the cost is unfathomable. The government tally comes out. 700,000 women are forever missing. 700,000 mothers, daughters, sisters, friends, gone.
A staggering number that permanently alters the demographics and the psyche of the nation. And we get to see how our survivors process this reality.
Aimee makes a definitive choice. She does not go back to her accommodating life in Pennsylvania. She never returns to the chattering anxiety of her mother or the cold detachment of her father.
Instead, she stays in that abandoned, ramshackle house in Seattle with Ginny and Teenie, and she turns it into a museum.
The Museum of Westward Women.
And the items Aimee chooses to curate are so poignant precisely because of their mundanity. She doesn't have grand historical documents. She has the debris left behind on the road.
A broken lava lamp with dried-up wax, a collection of empty glass jam jars, a dog-eared, waterlogged copy of Margaret Atwood's The Edible Woman.
She doesn't know the exact histories of these objects. She has no idea which specific missing woman owned that lava lamp or carried that book.
But she honors them anyway. She creates little placards for them. She asks the objects questions that will never be answered. Where did you come from? Who thought they owned you? How did you get away?
And when you contrast that with her father, it adds such a profound layer of meaning.
It raises a crucial point about how we preserve history, especially the history of the marginalized. Aimee's father, Gerald the entomologist, studied dead things.
He pinned insects to corkboards, categorized them by genus and species, trapped them behind glass, and dictated what they were.
Aimee's museum is the exact opposite. She refuses to pin these women down. She refuses to define them the way the politicians on the TV debate tried to define them.
She curates the living echoes of wild women.
By displaying their mundane artifacts, she becomes the keeper of their history. She proves that even if polite society wants to forget the chaos, sweep the tragedy under the rug, and go back to normal, the evidence of their rebellion remains.
The evidence of their mass refusal to comply is sitting right there in a jam jar.
It makes you think about the quiet rebellions we all harbor.
Bringing this all back to you, the listener. What does it mean to feel an itch in your own life? Have you ever felt that crushing, invisible weight of societal expectations?
The feeling of people needing you, defining you, asking you, when will dinner be ready? Or when are you going to settle down?
Have you ever felt that compulsion to just walk away from everything you've built and see who you are in the vacuum?
Martin's book is undeniably a terrifying piece of speculative fiction, but it hits so hard and leaves you feeling so breathless because it is rooted in a very real, very human desire for autonomy.
It takes that tiny, fleeting thought we've all had on a bad day, what if I just kept driving past my exit, and turns it into a national epidemic.
It truly does. It takes the internal and makes it terrifyingly external. And I want to leave you with a final lingering idea to mull over, building on the history we've unpacked today.
Okay, let's hear it.
Consider the aftermath of the epidemic in the novel's universe. The book frames the loss of 700,000 women as an unmitigated tragedy. And on an individual human level, of course it is. The grief is unimaginable.
Right.
But look at the macro timeline Martin quietly provides in the background. The infection delayed Nixon's impeachment hearings. The sheer loss of the female workforce forced a total restructuring of labor laws and economic policies.
It completely, irrevocably shattered the domestic expectations of the 1970s. The traditional nuclear family structure was forced to adapt or die.
It broke the system entirely.
It did.
So what if the infection wasn't just a random, cruel fungal disease? What if it was an evolutionary, societal immune response?
Oh, wow.
The body politic was sick with inequality, repression, and claustrophobia, and this devastating plague, horrifying as it was actually the brutal, necessary mechanism that forced the world to finally reckon with the autonomy and the value of women.
It invites you to consider a terrifying but fascinating question as you close the book.
Was the true disease the fungal infection? Or was the true disease the society that made 700,000 women want to run into the ocean in the first place?
Wow. That is definitely something that will keep you awake tonight. Thank you for taking this deep dive with us. We hope we've given you a new perspective on Alice Martin's phenomenal work. Until next time, keep questioning the world around you and maybe pay a little more attention to that itch.